I'm a New Jersey native. I come with a corporate background, so basically did marketing and brand management for the last 15 plus years, and then had reached a point of burnout with the leadership at my company. And I had always had this passion for wellness. So I thought, why not bring something I'm passionate about to the workplace to help people that were burning out, since that was where I was coming from. So I started Daily Dose Wellness 4 years ago, and we are a B2B company. We work with mid-sized businesses to help their employees develop health tips and prevent them from reaching a point of burnout.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow, because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, let's get right into this one. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but over the past few episodes, I've mentioned this show called The Blocks. And now I still can't tell you guys too much about it quite yet. But we got another person that I was able to meet at this show. I met a lot of great people at this show. A lot of connections were made. It was a great opportunity. So I can't wait to do a full dedicated episode on it. But that's going to be another day. But today we got a very special guest, Georgia. For anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So thanks for having me, John. Yes, I am a fellow Blockser. So that's how John and I met. But I'm a New Jersey native. I come with a corporate background. So basically did marketing and brand management for the last 15 plus years, and then had reached a point of burnout with the leadership at my company. So just up and quit, moved abroad, try to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I had always had this passion for wellness. So I thought, why not bring something I'm passionate about to the workplace to help people that were burning out, since that was where I was coming from. So I started Daily Dose Wellness 4 years ago, and we are a B2B company. We work with mid-sized businesses to help their employees develop health tips and prevent them from reaching a point of burnout.
So, Georgia, take us back in the time machine. What was little Georgia like in growing up? Were you always entrepreneurial? Like, what was that like growing up in your childhood?
No, I was always in trouble as a child, John. So I don't think I was a bad kid, but I was the oldest. And
Okay.
anyone
Out of how many?
What's that?
Out of how many?
4. So
Okay.
I had 3 older half brothers, but then I was the oldest of my parents' 4 kids. It was my dad's second marriage. And so I was always in trouble. I had 2 working parents, so they were always running around stressed. And so, yeah, I was known as the problem child. So if anyone else is the oldest, you might be able to relate to this, that theory that the youngest gets it the easiest was definitely the case in my family. So little Georgia was unique. She kind of had a lot of alone time, beating to her own tune. I built up a lot of stress resilience, I think, as a kid, because I always felt like I was in trouble. So yeah, I didn't have this entrepreneurial spirit, but it made me a hard worker, because I think I was always looking for approval when I was in school older, because my mom was my teacher when I was younger too. So that definitely factored in. But as I entered the workforce, I wanted to be that good employee. So I actually never really thought about being an entrepreneur. I just wanted to work for a company that I felt passionate about, and I wanted to climb the ranks. But the funny part is that when I left my last company, I had an exit interview with my boss, and we were friends. So I said, what do you think I should do next? And he said, I think you should start your own business. And I was like, no way. The world doesn't need another marketing agency, because in my head, I had thought, that's my background, marketing, and I don't really want to offer a marketing agency because I felt like there were too many out there. And it never even dawned on me, because at that point I was in my mid to late 30s, that I didn't think about just going in a totally new career path. So that was the interesting part. And then literally in a matter of 3 months, I had started Daily Dose. So it's amazing how quickly things can turn. And I believe in signs and kind of taking those signs and running with them. So we can get into that a little bit more on what actually made me start Daily Dose, if you'd like.
Yeah, no worries. So let's take us back a little bit. I want to sit in this for a little while. right? So you said your mom was a teacher, right?
And
So
dad. My mom
and
happened to
dad.
be my teacher as well, but I grew up with two teacher parents. Yes.
Okay, so two people that are working jobs, right? And so like they're were they entrepreneurial at all? Was there anyone in the household that was entrepreneurial?
No.
So
I
good.
mean, they didn't even understand the business world. So when I would come home and talk about work things, just totally different world.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And so you graduate high school. Where did your journey take you from there? Why marketing? What made you get into
I saw it on a movie. And the movie, I'm going to date myself here because I don't know if many of your listeners will know this, but there's this movie called Pitch Perfect. I believe it's Pitch Perfect. And it was with
that?
Jennifer Aniston. And
Okay.
she
Yeah.
was an
That's not
account
too
exec,
old.
right? It was like the mustard company. So she worked for this agency. And I just remember watching this movie and being like, that's what I want to do. I want to do advertising. And of course, the advertising world is not totally like that. That was more of an old school. But when I went to college, you basically could do marketing with two different majors. You could either be business or communications. And I was like, I want the business background. I want to have that foundation. And communications, no, I'm not passing shade to any of communications
No,
majors, but
we all know. We all know the yeah.
it's the catch-all, right? It's like, I don't
Yeah.
know what I want to do. I'll just go into comm. And I had so many friends that started as business and they were like, economics, statistics, accounting, I'm out. I'm going to do communications. And I was like, no, I want to do this. And I even had an economics teacher that literally told me I should drop out of the class. And that pissed me off. And I was like, I will get through this class, even though it's so difficult. So it was really important for me to get that business background, which I'm happy I did. And I'm proud of myself. But a lot of people, when I was in college, they said, oh, what do you want to do when you graduate? And I said, I want to go into advertising. And people were just totally poo-pooing it. Like, oh, it's long hours. You don't make any money. And I felt like that was what I wanted to do, though. So even though I knew it wasn't going to be lucrative and, the pay didn't match the hours, I still went for it. And that's how I started my career at a couple different ad agencies.
Yeah. So you decided to go against what everyone was telling you, and I feel like that's like a common theme in entrepreneurship. Now I know at that time you weren't entrepreneurial yet, right? But what was that like navigating the world at that time? So you're about to go into the real world. You're about to get out of college, get into the real world, become an adult, right, quote unquote, and the thing that you want to do, everyone's telling you to turn the other way. What made you decide to keep going with it? Like, was there something like just like a burning desire? Like, I want to try. I seen the movie. Like, it just kind of fueled you, or like, are you like a little stubborn and just like, you're not, like listen. Like, where does that kind of stem from?
Yeah. And I'm going to challenge what you said, John. So
Yeah.
I don't, and this is just me personally and my feeling on it, but I don't think that entrepreneurs necessarily want to do the opposite of what people are telling them to do. Just, I definitely think there's that characteristic of, we might be a little defiant, rebellious, that might come with the nature of that word entrepreneur. But for me, I think it's more if you have a strong feeling and desire to do something. For an entrepreneur, there's no stopping them, right? So if I didn't know what I wanted to do after college, I definitely would have welcomed other opinions. But because I felt so strongly about advertising, it didn't really matter what other people said because I wasn't looking for feedback. So I think
Yeah.
that's an important distinction. So like when my old boss said, you should do marketing, I felt very firm. No, I don't want to do this. And I didn't think I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I thought that was the only way I could be an entrepreneur. So I think the characteristic that entrepreneurs have is we have the intuition that usually helps drive us when we have that urge that really makes us want to do something that we feel strongly about. Now, there's times where we may not know what the next step is or what direction to go in. I think for a lot of us, for example, on the blocks, we were going there looking for answers. And when you hear Wes talk or the coaches talk, I do think we're in a place to be receptive and not defiant, where it's like, no, you're not, I'm going to do the opposite of what I'm being told to do. So I would kind of make that distinction where I think if we feel strongly about something, we're going to go with it. But I don't think that means that we're not open to feedback.
No, yeah, no, 100%. I wasn't saying that entrepreneurs. I wouldn't like talk badly about myself because I'm an entrepreneur.
No,
Yeah, no,
I get what you're saying. It's almost like
yeah,
if a teacher tells you can't do something, like the economics teacher, they were like, you should drop out of this class. I'm like, oh no, I will prove you wrong. But it was because that was aligned with my vision of being a business major, and I couldn't be a business major without passing that economics class. So I do think we have that kind of like, I'm going to show you or I'm going to prove you wrong. We kind of have that drive. So I'm with you, but
yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. No worries. And so you got into the corporate world, you got your job, right? And then you said you were 15 years in that world. What was that like? Right, climbing the corporate ladder, working 9 to 5 until eventually you just got burned out. Like before you got burned out, of course. What was that season of your life like?
Yeah, so, coming out of college, people were right. I was paid crap to work really long hours, but it was fun because it was all people my age. I got to be taken out to these fancy lunches by, at the time, it was magazine reps. So this is how far back we're going. Digital marketing wasn't that big then. So these magazine reps would take us out for fancy lunches, to concerts. So the perks made up for the long hours, but I started off in a very niche job description. And so my career path, I hopped around a lot, and I also moved because I always wanted to live someplace different. So when I went to San Diego, I tried to expand my role a bit more and be an account exec, where I was able to touch more pieces of the business than where I had started, which was specifically media planning. But when I had my first, second jobs, I was looking at my managers thinking, I don't want their job. So I think that's a good lesson too, when you're starting out in your career and looking at your superiors. Do you want to have the job that they have? And that, when I realized I didn't, that's when I expanded my role to be more account management, which was more all-encompassing. And then I decided to go opposite of the agency side of things and work internally at a brand. And I worked for a beverage importer. And when I landed that, it was my dream job. And mind you, they did not pick me at first. They hired someone else, and I continued to follow up with the hiring manager until that person eventually quit, and then I swooped in, and then I was with them for 8 years. So
wow,
definitely be tenacious, even if you don't get the job at first. What's that?
So the fortune's in a follow-up.
There you go. But yeah, when I took that job, it was my dream job. I was like, I'm going to be here for my whole career, and I loved it. And then things changed. So did that sum it up enough?
No, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And so from there, right, so you get to a point where you're starting to get burned out, right? If you don't mind sharing, like, how long did the burnout, season last before you finally pulled the plug?
Yeah. There were stages and phases, I should say. So there was one point where I was the only brand manager who was handling our entire portfolio. And, this is one of the issues with corporate America. We just keep, and I don't want to talk bad about my last company because I loved them and I loved working with them. But, companies, they tend to just keep giving you more because they think you can handle it. And you usually can, but at what cost? It's usually your health, right? So, I remember there were days where, because for me, it was very important to do a good job, not to just do the bare minimum. So when you have so much responsibility and you feel like you're not doing anything well, then it does weigh on you. So there were days, I remember a day where I literally was like, I might just go quit and not have another job lined up because it was that bad. And then I probably stayed for another 2 years. So 2 years after that wasn't all bad. It did get better because then we hired someone, but then there were new challenges. So, the interaction with certain managers, I was in an industry that, people were later on in their career. They didn't really want to make change. They didn't want to listen to someone with new processes. They were just kind of like, let me do my job. You stay in your lane. And that was hard for me to feel like I could make an impact the way that I wanted to. So I always tell people, now that I know burnout, I think there's a misconception that it just means you're working a lot. And that is definitely a big way that people burn out, but it's not the only way. And I had scaled back my hours. I was working from home a bit more because at that point they, trusted me and let me work from home. But I was still reaching that burnout because I felt like I wasn't getting the support I needed in the way I needed it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And then, so about 2 years or so, and then what was it like before we actually really start getting to like the entrepreneur stuff where you're at now? What was it like? What do we call it? Taking off the golden handcuffs and pulling the plug, ending that chapter of your life before getting into Daily Dose. Like, what was it like finally actually leaving? What were you going through? I know for me, I shared this in the last interview I just had, where it's like, even though I wanted to start entrepreneurship, me leaving my job, part of me wanted to cling on. Even though the other part was this is finally the chance to go all into my business. It's that time. Now or never. And there's still a part of me deep down that also wanted to just cling on and just stick it out for a little bit longer. And so did you have anything like that you were feeling when you actually decided to make the decision?
I felt confident when I made the decision, because the decision wasn't for me to quit. It was, I want to go live abroad. So kind of going back, if I had to pick one regret in life, it was that I didn't study abroad because I was afraid of missing a whole semester at the University of Scranton in Pennsylvania, which all we did is go to the same 2 bars every weekend. But anyway, so when I was older in life, I decided to go live abroad, which is a lot scarier when you're an adult versus when you're in college, I think. So I knew I wanted to do that. And I was getting these ads for this company, Remote Year, that was like, travel the world and keep your job. And I was like, yes, I want to do that. So I knew I wanted to go. I didn't know if the company would let me. So to be honest, I went in and had that conversation with my boss and said, I'm going. Now, he knew me well enough to know, okay, well, you're 1 foot out the door because what if we're not okay with it? And I said, I'll help you find my replacement. And he knew that meant, I was kind of 1 foot out the door. Now, if he turned around and said, okay, we're totally comfortable with you working abroad and living abroad for a bit, I probably would have stayed at least another year. Okay, so I knew that I wanted to go abroad. I was willing to go without the job. So for me, it was kind of, I left it up to the company and he said, we're not okay with this. Well, you could stay on for a little bit, transition. But then the pandemic hit and I was forced to fly home and figure it out quicker than I wanted to. And that was really scary because looking back, I think, well, if I had just kept that job, I could have on the side figured out what I wanted to do with Daily Dose. And instead of having that pressure of, okay, you're starting a business during a pandemic and have all of those factors to consider.
Yeah, and so when was that meeting that you said you mentioned earlier?
With my boss?
Was it with your boss that said that that you should start a business? Was it a mentor or your boss that said that you should start a business?
Oh, I should start a business. It was my old boss. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And like I said, we were friends and he wanted the best for me and he knew I was kind of struggling with some things. So he respected my decision to leave. We had that conversation. It was probably November. And then I went abroad very end
pandemic? Or before the pandemic?
November, right before the pandemic. So what was that,
2019? Yep.
And then I left to go abroad the very end of December and then had to fly home end of March because things were shutting down, and Daily Dose was incorporated at the end of April.
Wow. So like,
So it moved.
within like 4 months, it was like boom, 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 pretty much.
Right. That's why it's like I have that conversation in November where I'm like, I don't want to start my own business. And then all these things had happened where I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because when I came home I was in South Africa at the time, and it was March, and I was like, crap, now I need to get another marketing job. And I was applying, and it was like my insides were like rejecting it. It was like, I don't want this job. I don't want this job. And that's why I said I feel like entrepreneurs are very intuitive, where we're like, if we feel we should be going in a direction, like we follow it. And I was just, my body was physically rejecting me applying for marketing jobs. And I was like, okay, I have to do something else. And when I was abroad, I had met with this yoga teacher beforehand that I was working on this kind of passion project for her to try and bring her yoga retreats to the corporate setting. And so I had already kind of been working on this. It was just more of a side project. But when I got back, it was the only thing I really cared about. And that's what made me pivot and think, well, maybe I could just do this full time.
Now, around that time, so you said end of April, it got incorporated, right? And end of May, right? And so you had some experience already. Now, around that time, that's also when I started working at the restaurant. I think I started in late May, 2020. I remember in March, I got sent home from college. I was a sophomore. I don't know, I was ending my freshman year. And then we got into it. And for me, I seen it as some massive opportunity. Not originally, not at first. But then I started working. And a lot of people at that time were just like taking unemployment and sitting at home and not really doing anything. And for me, I was like, I don't got nothing better to do. Let me get out there and hustle. Let me get after it. Let me figure something out. I ended up stumbling into Barnes & Nobles, and that's how I got into reading. And that's what sparked my whole entrepreneurial journey that I'm on now. But like, a lot of people during that time just completely took a pause and really didn't do anything to, pursue their dreams or, turn an idea into reality or stuff like that. So like, why didn't you pause at that time? Because you very much, well, kind of could have. I mean, it's a global pandemic. The world just shut down. What made you still keep going and pursuing the Daily Dose?
Well, I was out of a job, so I had an apartment and expenses, but at that time I didn't know exactly what funding the government was going to give. I ended up being able to get unemployment because even though I voluntarily quit my job when the pandemic happened, I was seen as a freelancer. So that helped qualify me to get unemployment, and that really kept me afloat for a year and a half. But I still need to figure out what I was going to do next. So I could have taken more time to do that. But, like I said, I was applying for marketing jobs, and then I was like, I don't really want to do this. And then I was still working on that project on the side. And the yoga teacher, when I met with her, she was like, listen, things change on my side. I don't really have time to dedicate towards this, but let's check back in a couple months. And so I could have waited because we were supposed to partner on this. And then I didn't want to because I was feeling very motivated. And that's why, I talk a lot about motivation now. And I wrote a book called You're Not Lazy, because I think a lot of times people say they're lazy, but really they're not motivated. And I think we need to look deeper into why. But if you're motivated, you just want to go. So I was feeling very motivated because someone that was in my abroad program, she had just left her corporate job and became an entrepreneur. And she was like, you should start your own business. This was probably in February. And I was like, no. So I was still not in that mindset of starting my own business in February, 2 months before I incorporated. But she did give me access to her business program. It was an online curriculum. And so I had this time on my hands, and I was whipping through the lessons, and I was just feeling motivated. And I was like, what if I just try and do this on my own? I didn't want to wait for the yoga teacher. So I sent the paperwork away, but I still wasn't convinced at that point. But when I received the LLC papers in the mail at the end of April, I was like, I guess I have a business. And at that point, I felt like I needed, like, I had just, it was official. So I had to go with it. I didn't even feel like it was an option at that point. I was like, okay, I have a business. Let's make this work. But I think with the pandemic, I was kind of looking at that time as time for me to get things up and running. So I needed to build a website. I needed to create a brochure, figure out what our pricing was, our programs. So I wasn't, sitting around doing nothing, but it was giving me that time to prep everything for the business.
Yeah. So you just took advantage of the time that you had, all the free time.
Exactly.
So, yeah, amazing. And around that time too, as you said, so for me, it started very similarly. I had an online program. The program was on real estate wholesaling, which is like nowhere near close to what I'm doing now at all. But thank God for like digital courses and programs. It's like it's something that's so convenient. Like you could learn exactly what you want to learn in an organized and structured way.
Yeah.
And it's all accessible from your computer, your phone, your laptop, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so thank God for that. And so you were setting everything up. Now I'm curious because sometimes people get into entrepreneurship, and it's usually sometimes not always, but sometimes a little earlier in their life, where it's they kind of know they want to start a business and not want to work for someone. Were there any like for me? I knew I didn't want to work for anyone. The pandemic helped me really dive into entrepreneurship, but my plan was to originally to get a job in marketing of some sort. It just happened that the world stopped for a little while, and I had a lot of free time. But was there any programming that you had to do to see the world as a business owner because you spent so much time in corporate and succeeded in corporate? Was there anything that you had to unwire and then rewire to get you in that business state of mind? Because being W-2 and being in your own business is two totally different worlds. It feels like that sometimes. It's was there any issues with that? It's did you kind of take a lot of the skills that you learned and kind of transition kind of seamlessly into the mindset of being a business owner?
I feel like a lot of what I learned was new on how to be. I don't think you could really prep to be a business owner until you're in the throes of it and doing it. So, I mean, even things like sales, I was exposed to doing sales at my last job because I worked for a small company. So even though I was marketing, I had to go out in the field and sell our beer into retailers. And so I had a little bit of sales experience, but that did not prepare me for the sales I had to do for my own business as an entrepreneur, especially kicking off at the start of the pandemic when you got a lot of no's and no one really preps you for how to feel rejected.
Yeah.
So I'm this is is this dating? Why are there, you feel like you're, kind of going out there, putting yourself out there and then giving people the opportunity to reject you. So that's definitely hard, but I learned through a lot of the courses that, everything I was listening to was mindset, right? And I still work on this, even though I know a lot about mindset now, and I actually started teaching myself on mindset as a result of the business and everything I have learned. But it's really about reframing things. So I was representing this clean skincare brand on the side, Beauty Counter, and they had provided sales training as a beauty counter consultant. So that wasn't even something I paid for, but it was just something I had access to. And one of the things they taught me, because, all those MLM companies get a bad rap, people don't even want to hear. And what I learned from them is you have to think of your product or service as providing value, and you're providing a solution to a problem, and you're not trying to sell someone something. And once I started thinking about it like that, it felt a little more okay if I did get quote unquote rejected, because really, if I could just tell myself this person doesn't need this service and that's okay, and now I'm going to move on to someone that does. So I think that's a big lesson, especially with sales, because a lot of times people are like, I'm afraid to even have that question or ask for whatever we want, ask for the sale, because we don't want to come off as salesy. And that was definitely something I thought as a marketer. I was like, I hate sales. I hate being salesy. I hate when people try and sell to me. But I realize it now, not only as someone that's now in sales as a business owner, but also as a consumer. There's so much spam I'm getting. But if someone reaches out to me and it's something that I need or I want, even though if I don't know them or the brand, I engage with it. So it's a
Yeah.
good lesson if you catch people at the intersection of when they're looking for something and they want whatever it is that you're providing. You just have to look at it as you're doing a disservice if you don't let them know about it, because they need your product or service. And if they don't, just move on to the next person that does.
No, 100%. I'm glad that you reframed it that way. I was about to, say something similar, just different words, but about like it's your moral obligation to help people, and if you know you can help them, why are you gonna, tuck your tail between your legs and go the other way because you're scared of maybe potentially being rejected? If you know the person actually has a problem that you know you could help, why not tell them about your thing? Now, if they don't want to buy it for whatever reason, right, whether it's, then we get into like objection handling, right, and overcoming objections, yada, yada, yada. But for the most part, to keep it simple, if someone's struggling and you know you can help them, why not tell them about it? Like,
Right.
I mean, for the most part, you get into business to help people, right?
Right.
At at least hopefully, right? You get into business to help people. It's like if someone's struggling, help them out. Now they may say, "Oh, but I need to think about it." Well, what do you need to think about? You suck at this. I help you with this. Everyone's happy. Boom.
Right.
It's simple. And of course, it's more complicated, right?
Of course.
Yeah, right. But like in a nutshell, to keep it simple, right, for podcasting's sake, like that, someone has a problem, you have a solution, boom, it's a match made in heaven.
Right.
Or it's not.
And another thing on that is just because someone says no, it doesn't mean no, period, forever. It just means no for right now. I mean, there's so many client companies I've reached out to that are like, I think people's instant knee-jerk reaction is to be like, no, I don't need this. Because if you think about how many spam emails and phone calls we're getting these days, you're just like, nope, not interested. Nope, not interested. But then something might come across where you're like, nope, not interested. And then maybe a couple days go by and you're like, wait, someone called me about this and I feel like we could use that. So just think of it as, trying to bring people into your universe to then keep them engaged with you and not always trying to sell them. And, this was an important learning, I feel like, on the blocks was kind of your content. How much of it are you trying to sell versus provide value? And I think if you just look at it as this person doesn't need to buy my service right now, but can they benefit and can I bring them into my universe so I could keep providing value until they do need to buy until they want to buy the service?
Yeah, no, exactly. Because I said it's not right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't help them other ways, right? You say, I'll give you some little tidbits every now and then that'll hopefully help you out. And
right.
It's a little different depending if you're, working with other business owners or if you're working with like people who are consumers, right? But nevertheless, let's say you're working strictly with consumers, and it's like, let's say like an esthetician, right? But what are some things you can do to provide value, right? You can give a skincare routine, like, hey, here's like my skincare routine, here's what I do and stuff like that. And then after a while, they're like, oh, I want my face to look like hers. Boom. Like, I don't know if you remember, oh my goodness, I'm so bad with names.
Amanda?
No, not Amanda. Blonde. She had like she looked like she, was on a newscaster or like a celebrity though, but she was in my blocks a whole bunch. And she had a beauty spa, and like she had a very tall.
I'm thinking of
skinny,
Amanda, but because she had a permanent makeup company.
No, Amanda. That's Eastside Microblading. No, Amanda's not tall. Yeah, Amanda's shorter than me. A lot shorter.
I think I know who you're talking about. Short hair, short blonde hair.
Yeah, short blonde hair. Yep, very well put together. Yeah, very, very well, very well polished. Tall, skinny. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, jeez, I've spent so much energy trying to think of her name that I forgot where I was going. But I had as a good point. Oh my goodness.
You were talking about estheticians, and I don't know where you're going with it.
Lost. Yeah, I don't know either. I was trying to think of her name. I remember her face. I just can't remember her name.
Right.
But I think I was gonna go something along the lines of like, yeah, I completely forgot what I was gonna say. Long story short, provide some value. Provide value until people are ready to buy with you.
Right.
In a nutshell.
Right. Exactly.
And then when you
Live
forget
before
what you
you
have to say,
receive.
pivot the conversation. It's very important as an entrepreneur to be able to pivot. So when you forget, have something that you can spin back on.
There you go. I'm waiting for this next question.
No, but right. So, you started talking about sales and rejection. For me personally, it's one of those things. Where it's like you kind of have to like almost like detach yourself from the outcome, right? Because like a lot of times you take it personal. Like they're not saying no to you as a human being. Like they don't hate your guts. It's like this may not be a good fit right now.
Right.
It's like that was something that I know for me took me a little bit. It's like, well, if you're struggling with it and I can help you, like, I mean, the only other option is just like it has to be me, you know. And sometimes it's just not a good time right at that point.
Right. Yeah, and listen, we're human, so it's easy for us to sit here and say, "Don't take it personally," but for listeners, when you're in that moment, you're still taking it personally, and that's our default. So, if you are feeling that way, my advice would be to just give yourself a day off if you want of selling. You know, there have been times where I'm like, I am just getting angry or frustrated and I can't show up, you know, happy-go-lucky selling when I'm feeling that way. So I worked on other parts of my business those days and just kind of took a break from the rejection. But I think the ideal is what you said, John. If you can reframe it or detach yourself from the outcome, or just tell yourself, okay, this just means no for right now, but let me continue to provide value and maybe they'll become a client down the road. But if you are feeling yourself really running into that frustration or feeling rejection, then allow yourself time to maybe not sell for the day. I know that's, you know, salespeople would be like, no, that's suicide because then you don't have anything in the pipeline that day. But listen, we're human and sometimes we just need a reset. So give yourself the grace and the time to do that so you can bounce back and better show up the next day.
And it's a lot easier. A lot of those salespeople, like they're selling for a company or selling for someone else's business, or like they're like a closer for someone else's. Like, you know, for them it's easy because they don't have to worry about the marketing and the, you know, and the operations and everything. They just show up and sell, which is like you're worried on their thing, but it's like as a business owner, there's so much more outside of selling. That's just such a small little sliver of what it means to actually be a business owner. It's just like when you have all these other things that you still have to manage, it's a lot harder to show up and sell than if you're just your only thing is showing up to sell.
Definitely.
But, like, time has been flying for like the past 40 minutes have been since we started talking. Like, Georgia, where can we catch up with you? I know you said you have a book that you already have out and is available, and you have some exciting things working out for us. And you know that's coming up. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you at so like we can keep up with more of what you have going on and get more of that value content that we were talking about?
That's right.
More value content for you. Where can we keep up with you?
That's right. So it's just my name on LinkedIn and Instagram. I live on LinkedIn, so if anyone's on there, or I did create a new Instagram account to go along with the book. So that's Georgia, like the state. My last name for anyone listening is Homsany, Georgia Homsany. And the book is called You're Not Lazy, Change Your Words to Change Your Worth. And that's all about self-talk and how we can kind of reframe negative things that we tell ourselves to be more positive. That way we can show up better and have more confidence in whatever we're doing. So you can get the book on georgiahomsany.com.
Now it's time for our famous 5 questions. Right? Ooh. Question number 1. What is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Oh my gosh. See, I need time to think about these questions. I'm not, on the spot is not my forte. Okay.
You got to be ready to go at all times.
I know. Not my thing. Okay. The most important lesson I've learned in life?
Yeah, impactful. Important, impactful. Yeah. Tomato, same thing.
Okay. If your gut is saying no or fighting you on something, then listen to it.
Great lesson. Quick little. I normally don't interrupt because it's a lightning round, but like literally Like literally, like yesterday, I had a speaking engagement that I walked away from because like in my heart it just didn't feel right to continue with doing it, even though I was going to. But I agree with that a hundred
See,
percent. I literally just had it yesterday.
I'm proud of you, John. That makes me very
But yeah,
happy. But
so
I one of the things I learned, I know we're in speed round, but one of the things I learned with since I started the business was about human design, which I never heard about. And so yeah, that's where I learned about following your gut. So if anyone's intrigued by human design, we can chat about that too.
all right. What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Admirable, say that again a little bit louder.
Admirable trait.
In a person?
Yeah.
Willingness to listen
If
and
you
kind
could
of hear
change
the other
someone's
side
life,
of things. Hmm?
yeah. If you could change someone's life, but you only had one book, which book would you recommend?
You're a Badass by Jen Sincero.
I seen her live, by the way. She was dope. Dope presentation.
Yeah.
And then, what is the legacy that you're working on leaving behind?
What is the legacy I'm working on to leave behind? It's a good one. Yeah, it's hard for me to answer this because I don't have children yet. So I really have just been thinking about what I want to do. Legacy I
for the
want to leave
world.
behind. Okay, I got it. It's a message that you can do whatever you want to do. Essentially, I have a chapter in the book called Life by Design that someone had kind of taught me, like it's basically just do what you want to do. And I have a lot of friends that kind of look at me like, oh, you are just traveling around, how are you able to do this, how are you able to not have a home base? And I mean, I think you can do whatever you want to do. You just need that mindset and you need a plan for how you're going to do it. But it is possible to be an entrepreneur, be struggling, but then become a millionaire, have the houses you want to, and make an impact at the same time. That's another one too. You can be rich and still be humble and impacting people's life. So I like to think you can have it all. And so my legacy, I would say, is being a role model for that message.
And for anyone who wants to embark on the Walk to Wealth today,
Wants
what is
to,
the first
I couldn't
embark?
hear you. Say it again.
Embark. Sorry. For anyone that wants to embark on their Walk to Wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take? Really quickly.
It's a hard step. Overcoming your money blocks. And you probably need outside help with that. So like a course on, we had someone from the blocks that works on subconscious blocks, money blocks, but you're not going to get wealthy unless you get over some of those hurdles that are in your mind and they're on a subconscious level.
Yeah, 100%. So that is all for this episode. I just found out that this entire episode was recorded on my MacBook mic instead of my actual mic. So I just had this here for decoration for anyone that's watching. But that's why we have editors. Thank God. Because if not, my audio probably wouldn't have sounded as good. But Georgia, again, thanks for hopping on the podcast. I had a great time chatting with you, and I'm glad we were able to stay connected after the show and looking forward to staying connected moving forward. And I'll let you know when it drops, okay?
Same here. Thanks, Sean. Bye, everyone. Connect with me on